Well, interesting developments. Let's go to Bremen. Let's bring in Lazaros Karavasilis, a researcher on populism and radical parties in Europe at the University of Bremen. Great to have you on the programme, Lazaros. Let's begin. Your analysis of the Dava party. What do you think about them? How do they read across the country? How popular could they be? And is Erdogan behind them?
If it's Erdogan right behind them, I think to a certain extent, yes. And I believe that it's an attempt to gain more footing in Germany and with Turkish populations there, so they can have a better understanding of the inner workings. Maybe they can pressure more Germany and by extent EU, but it's still very early to have a more complete picture. We just have to wait for the developments to unfollow and see how and to what extent that Dava party is going to establish itself.
Let's talk about another significant, well, even more significant party in Germany right now, the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland, the Alternative for Germany. Now, the course of the party is interesting in the polls because I think they were flying high last year, particularly up to about 23%, were they? Since January, the figure's taking a slump. And let's just talk about some of the scandals, some of the issues that's affected it. First of all, there was this, I think, clandestine meeting between far-right members and some party officials about basically the re-deportation of those that they didn't believe affiliated enough in society that could be deported, to which they denied, but it's caused a scandal. And then secondly, we had this recently, Maximilian Krah, the candidate for the EU elections, his assistant charged with claims of being a spy for the Chinese. Again, claims denied. And Maximilian Krah also preliminary investigation over taking money from the Russians and Chinese. Again, he denies that. So just give me your assessment of where the party stands right now ahead of the EU elections.
It's a very peculiar situation for the AfD because, yes, it is indeed soaring, let's say, rather high in voter preference, but it has been boggled by a lot of scandals. The scandals that you mentioned in January, some party officials, including one of the leading figures, Alice Weidel, were found in a meeting with other extremist groups discussing about a master plan for deportation of immigrant citizens in Germany, of citizens with immigrant origins. We also have the case of the Björn Höcke in the Thuringia party branch of AfD, who has been also in court, and last week he was fined for supposedly promoting a very Nazi political slogan, "Everything for Germany." That was also a problem because it showed how sometimes far right in Germany and the AfD also use the excuse of freedom of speech to promote sometimes their ideas. And that creates a peculiar situation where you have a lot of people actually supporting the AfD. But on the other hand, you also have the party that has its own problems, and you also have the diffusion of the far-right ideas that these parties promote, such as the AfD. Yes.
I mentioned at the start about this, the fragmentization of centrist parties, likely to dominate. But again, since the 80s, I think you look at parties across Europe and they were getting, whether it was socialists, conservatives, Democrats, either side of the centre, about 85% of the vote. This time they're looking to get, just over 50% of the vote in various countries. If we talk about Germany, for example, the traditional image of the far right over the years was the young angry man with the skinhead, or the old angry man sitting on a doorstep shouting at the clouds. But it's not like that anymore, is it? We're talking about a lot of younger generations also disenfranchised. And I think a lot of the marketing, a lot of the targeting by the far right is about what you haven't got but could have. What do you see as the key charm, if that's the right word, that the far right is still having, and perhaps more so now in Germany?
One of, as it is commonly known, one of the main issues that the far right promotes is the importance of immigration and of refugees. And of course, it's an important issue, but how they set the agenda, they managed to have a better footing on that issue compared to other parties, let's say. And that, of course, it's a sort of a spillover effect that says that this happens in the refugee and immigration crisis. And of course, it has implications to a German welfare state and so on and so forth. So the far right actually managed to become a little bit hegemonic on that field and how to set that issue. Regardless of the people that support them, we also see that we have, let's say, an expansion of the far right ideas on the online field. There is also a lot of online hatred and violence towards Jews, towards people in Islamic origins, and we also see that in a greater extent. We also see that in other parties. For example, there are some ideas that also the new party by Sarah Wagenknecht started to promote, especially on the immigration issue, and it shows that how these ideas become prevalent a little bit, which is one of the worrying factors here.
As we were talking, we were seeing some of the images of the Spanish far-right group Vox 10 years ago, weren't in existence, now expecting to do extremely well in the polls. I want to ask one more question about Germany, then I want to move on to this big event in Madrid tomorrow. Just first of all, I just wonder if you see a correlation. I remember at the time, the risk, perhaps, the open arms policy that Angela Merkel took, the Wir schaffen das, to help Syrian refugees during the Syrian crisis, which became a bigger political crisis, and how the AfD have jumped on that, not just appealing to those poorest in society, but appealing to those who fear that they could be worse off.
Yes, you're absolutely right, because Merkel and her policies and her mindset on the refugee crisis, like 10 years ago, was different in that regard. And of course, but no matter how inclusive it might have been, let's say inclusive, it still left a lot of people who were afraid of what was going to happen. And of course, the far right cultivated these emotions and these ideas as well. And we see today's AfD appeal not being a product of something spontaneous or out of the open, but being the work of 10 years promoting and cultivating that kind of sentiment, especially in Eastern Germany, but of course, all over Germany.
Let's switch then to Madrid and get your thoughts, because this big far-right pan-party conference taking place, Marine Le Pen is expected to be there, of the French far-right. Also, Giorgia Meloni were expecting to be there from Italy, the Prime Minister. Javier Milei is coming over, the new populist far-right Argentina president. Let's have a listen to what he said as he arrived in Madrid.
What I'm saying is, rather than being so concerned about the differences that we have between us on our side, let's not let the dark, black, satanic, atrocious, dreadful, cancerous side, which is socialism, win. You can do it.
And notable for a foreign leader, at the moment is not likely to see the Prime Minister, the Socialist Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, which is against diplomatic protocols. So that tells you the politicking going on right now. Just also tell us something. All of these far-right groups, they're not a sort of a joined body either, are they? Some of them really don't like the others.
Yes, they don't, but they managed to find common ground against as we said before, cultivated fears and a very big danger that supposedly comes in the form of socialism for them, however we define that nowadays. So their appeal and their growing, let's say, coalition potential among them comes in the form of how easy they can manipulate these affects and how they can appeal to that. And Javier Milei is actually a really good example of how to successfully manage to manipulate that kind of sentiments.
I wonder what your thoughts. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, just on that point that you raise, I just wonder what you think is, for those centrist politicians who are worried about the far-right rhetoric, the anti-immigration rhetoric, the anti-Muslim rhetoric, what you do about that. If you go back a few years, we had the then Prime Minister, now Foreign Minister in the UK, David Cameron, calling them swivel-eyed loons. I just wonder whether that is a policy that kind of doesn't work anymore, where they have to change the rhetoric. And if so, what do you think is the best way to deal with that?
Unfortunately, there isn't only one answer to that, but on their behalf, we have seen a lot of instances where even centrist mainstream parties also incorporate some of the ideas. I mean, the recent example of the UK Minister of Home, also showed how they can incorporate far-right ideas, but also in terms of, even if we call them loons, that doesn't serve any purpose, because for some people who are closer to that and who are disappointed by centrist parties, for them, these people appear to say the truth and things as it is, although, of course, it's not true. That actually doesn't work. And we see also that in Germany, it has the firewall against the far right also has some problems. And especially now, if we see, for example, possible wins by AfD in state elections in Brandenburg, Saxony, and Thuringia in this year, how exactly that is going to work it's a big question, actually. So,
Lazaros, good to talk to you. Lazaros Karavasilis, researcher on populism and radical parties at the University of Bremen. Speak to you soon, no doubt.
Thank you very much.